QuickBooks Online makes it easy to see the bills you need to pay. You choose the bills to pay, how much to pay on each, and QuickBooks Online records the payment transactions. Let's start by going to the vendors list. From the dashboard, go to the navigation bar on the left side and click Expenses. Then at the top of the screen, click Vendors. When you look at the vendors list, there are colored bars up above the table. The orange bar shows bills that are past due. In this case, it's $0, so that's good news. The next bar is for open bills, and it shows how many open bills there are and the total amount. The green bar on the right side shows how much you've paid in the last 30 days. Now, in addition to seeing a quick look at the status of what you need to pay vendors, there's a really great shortcut. If you want to see just the vendors who have open bills, click the bar that says Open Bills, and the vendor list will filter to just show those vendors. You can do the same thing with overdue bills. If I click the Overdue bar, it says there are no vendors matching, which is great. But let's go back to open bills. If you decide you want to pay just one of these bills, you can do it right here. Just go to the action cell for the vendor that you want, and there's a link that says Make Payment. Click that link, and that will open up the bill payment screen, and you can pay this particular bill. And that's great. But there's an easier way if you want to pay multiple bills at the same time. So let's go ahead and click the X up at the top right corner to close that screen. Let's say that you want to pay multiple bills, most of the open bills that you have. To do that, we're going to head up to the top right and click the Create icon, the plus in the circle, and then underneath Vendors, choose Pay Bills. That takes you to the Pay Bills screen, which is set up with all of the open bills that are ready to pay. The first thing you want to do is choose your payment account. In this case, we just have the one checking account, so I'm going to keep that selected. The next thing to do is to click the calendar icon in the payment date box and choose the date that you're going to have on the checks. So I'm going to choose that date. And then if I want to set the starting check number, I can type that in the box. I have a very short list of bills, so I don't really need to filter the list, but I do want to show you some of the things that you can do. Click the down arrow next to Filter. You can filter your bills by the due date. Now, this is set to the last 365 days, but you could specify a date range if you wanted to. You could also specify a payee to just see the bills for a specific vendor. Or if you wanted to see the bills for a particular location, you could do that as well. One thing that's really handy is to turn on the checkbox for overdue status only so that you see only the bills that are overdue because you want to get those paid right away. Let's go ahead and click Apply and see what happens. Well, in this case, we know that we don't have any overdue bills, so of course the list is empty. To clear the filter, just go up above the table and click the link that says Clear Filter, View All. Another thing to notice is that there's this triangle next to due date, and it's pointing up. What this means is that this table is sorted by due date starting from earliest to latest. Another thing you can do is you could sort by payee instead. When you do that, all of the bills for that same vendor will be grouped together. But in this case, I want to sort by due date. So I click that due date heading, and now I'm back to sorted by due date. The upward pointing triangle is next to the due date heading. When you're ready to set up the bills to pay, you can select individual checkboxes. But if you have the list filtered and so everything you see in the table is a bill that you want to pay, go up and click the checkbox that's in the heading row, and that will select all of the bills that are visible in the table. Now, once you do that, you can also choose how much you want to pay. QuickBooks Online automatically fills in the full amount, but if you're short on cash and you need to pay a partial amount, you can change the payment amount here in the payment column. In this case, I'm going to pay the full amount. One thing to notice, down at the bottom right corner, the new account balance shows you the balance in your payment account after you pay the bills. Now, in this case, we haven't put any money in our checking account yet, so it has a zero balance, which means that after paying these bills, the balance is negative. Don't worry about that for now. We'll get some money in the checking account shortly. Let's go ahead and go down to the bottom right corner and click Save and Print. When I do that, I see a message that 2 bills are marked as paid. However, I haven't printed any checks yet, so we have to interrupt our process a little bit to set up printing checks. The first thing I'm going to do is select the type of checks. I'm going to choose Standard, which has 3 checks on a page. Then you could load paper in the printer, click View Preview and Print Sample to make sure everything lines up correctly. If it's the way you want, go down to the bottom right and click Yes, I'm finished with setup. Now we're on the Print Check screen. We've got our payments that are set up to be printed. I'm going to fill in my starting check number, and on the first page, we're printing 3 checks because we've just started printing checks. Now, once you've printed checks, you may have a partial page. And in that case, you want to click the down arrow and specify how many checks you're going to print on that first page. Now let's go down to the bottom right and click Preview and Print. In this Print Preview screen, you'll see what's going to get printed. And as long as it looks like what it should, go down to the bottom right and click the Print button. That brings you to the screen that shows the page as it's going to print and provides settings for your printer. If you need to make any changes over here, you can do that before you print. But in this case, I'm just going to print by clicking the Print button up at the top of the screen. Now I'm going to click the Close button at the bottom left, and there's a message asking if the checks printed okay. Well, most of the time they do. And in that case, this option, yes, they all printed correctly, is already selected and you can click Done. But let's say that the printer jammed or you spilled something on some of the checks. You could choose another option. Some checks need reprinting, and you could specify the starting check number. Or you could say, no, keep all the checks in the list because you have to reprint all of them. In this case, I'm going to say they printed correctly and click Done. Now the queue is empty, so I can go up to the top right and click the X to close that screen. Notice back in the Vendors page, there are no longer any open bills. It shows in this gray bar as $0 and 0 open bills, and the payments we made show up in the green bar under Paid in the last 30 days. Keep in mind, if you want to pay other bills using a different payment method, like a credit card or another checking account, you can just repeat all of these steps, but just choose the other payment account when you start. And that's how you pay bills in QuickBooks Online.